Hello and welcome to my in-depth guide for Heal Firebrand for Endgame PvE, specifically raids and fractals. Heal Firebrand offers a high amount of boons including 15 to 20 might, permanent quickness, fury and swiftness, as well as some regeneration and protection for 5 people. It offers moderate amount of healing and has on-demand Aegis, Stability, Resistance and Resolution. It has access to all the strong Guardian skills, including a unique damage buff when running the Radiance trait line. It is technically not considered meta in either of the game modes, however it is very common in pods. It is a very strong primary healer in Fractals and secondary healer in raids besides a druid. Let's look at the build. For armor, we will be running full Harrier with superior Rune of the Monk. For weapons, we will use a Harrier staff with Transference and Concentration Sigil, as well as Axe Shield with Concentration and Transference Sigil as well. Trinkets will be full Harrier. If you're running in Fractals, you can swap out some Harrier pieces for Cleric for the extra toughness and healing power. Make sure to stay at 100% boon duration and be careful with running any toughness pieces in raids. A lot of fights are toughness based aggro in raids, so you will tank if you have the highest toughness. If you do want to tank raid bosses, you will run either Giver or Minstrel. Giver has the added benefit of not dropping any concentration, while Minstrel has the added benefit of giving you more HP, making you more tanky. For traits, there are two different setups. Both setups are running Honor and Firebrand, while one is running Radiance and the other one is running Virtues. In Honor, we will take Invigorated Bulwark, Honorable Staff, and Rid of Persistence. We can change out Honorable Staff for Pure of Hearts and raids, since Might will usually be provided by a druid for us. In Firebrand, we will take Liberator's Vow, Weighty Terms, and Lore Master. In Radiance, we will be taking Healer's Resolution, Wrath of Justice, and Perfect Inscriptions. For skills, we will be taking Mantra of Solace, Mantra of Potence, and Bane Signet. The other two slots can be chosen based on the encounter. In Virtues, we will be running Resolute Subconscious, Absolute Resolve, and Battle Presence. We can run Master of Consecrations when we run with any consecration skills. These are Wall of Reflection, Purging Flames, Hallowed Ground, and Sanctuary. With this setup, we will run Mantra of Solace and Mantra of Potence. However, we drop the Bane Signet and can now adjust all 3 slots based on the encounter. Let's have a more in-depth look into some of the more important trait lines. Firebrand grants us access to Axe in the main hand, as well as access to mantras, and our virtues will change into tomes. Those will be explained in the next section. Liberator's Vow grants quickness to allies when using your heal skill. This trait has an internal cooldown of 7 seconds, and therefore casting the healing skill more often than this will not result in quickness being given. Weighty Terms is mainly taken for the reduction of the mantra recharge time. Using a mantra charge will also inflict some slow on the enemy on a 10-second internal cooldown. However, this active part is not a main focus. Lore Master will reduce the cooldown of the tome skills. You will not be able to enter tomes more often with this, but it will make using certain skills twice per tome cast easier. While tomes are on cooldown, we will also keep the passive effect of the virtues. In Honor, we will have Selfless Daring. This makes our dodges heal at the end of them. Honorable Staff will reduce the staff cooldown and gives concentration. This will help with maintaining might in Fractals. Alternatively, Pure of Heart provides extra healing when blocking attacks if might is not needed, like in raids when you have a druid providing 10-man might anyways. Lastly, Rid of Persistence gives healing to symbols and makes them last longer. This is going to be a core part of the passive sustain that Heal Firebrand has. Radiance is the more aggressive choice with the ability to share extra power and condi damage to your group at the cost of some healing. Renewed Justice will refresh the F1 tome when killing an enemy. However, it will not refresh the cooldown of the skills in the F1 tome. Wrath of Justice will cast Lesser Signet of Wrath every time you hit with the damaging effect of F1. For Firebrand, this means hitting an enemy with a skill from the F1 tome. Usually this has an ICD of 25 seconds, but it will be reduced to 20 seconds due to the Perfect Inscriptions trait. Lastly, Perfect Inscriptions is the main reason for taking the Radiance trait line. It is often referred to by its abbreviation PI, and will reduce signet cooldowns and share their passive effects with allies after using them. This makes you able to actively use Bane Signet as a CC and at the same time share 216 power to your group. Alternatively, it can also share Signet of Wrath for Condi DPS, and it shares the same Condi bonus when Lesser Signet of Wrath from the Wrath of Justice trait triggers. Lastly, Virtues. Virtues grants a lot of extra passive healing and opens up a second utility slot by dropping the Signet. Resolute Subconscious provides a small extra defense boost but is only taken when not running any consecrations. Master of Consecrations reduces the recharge of consecrations and extends their durations. Those are Wall of Reflection, Purging Flames, Hallowed Ground, and Sanctuary. When running one of these 4 skills, make sure to always run Master of Consecrations. Absolute Resolve makes going into the F2 tome cleanse conditions from allies. It also gives a good boost to the passive healing of F2. Remember that this passive healing will always be active even when F2 is on cooldown due to the Lore Master trait from the Firebrand trait line. Power of the Virtues reduces the recharge on the tomes. This, however, does not affect the skills in the tomes. However, you will be able to go into your F2 and F3 tomes specifically a lot more often, making this a very strong trait. Lastly, Battle Presence grants nearby allies the passive effect of the Virtue skill too. This means you will share the passive healing from your F2 to your allies, which gives a very nice boost to the passive sustain you have. Remember that this boost is also strengthened by the Absolute Resolve trait and always active due to the Lore Master trait even if F2 is on cooldown. Let's have a look at our tomes. Activating a tome will replace your weapon skills and grant you 5 skill usages. You can also leave the tome early though. Tomes also have the passive effect from the Virtues. Through the trait Lore Master and the Firebrand line, those passive effects will be kept even after the tomes have been used. All tomes are built in a similar way. Skill 1 creates an effect in front of us. Skill 2 creates an effect around us. Skill 3 is a unique skill based on the tome. In this case, it's a ranged pull. Skill 4 creates a field, and Skill 5 grants a unique buff to our allies. You will mainly go into your F1 tome to provide the fire field. Skill 1 and 2 are mostly useless for heal Firebrand since they only provide damage. Skill 3 is a strong ranged CC that pulls all enemies in the targeted area together. Skill 4 will create a fire field that can then be used to blast might to your allies. Skill 5 will grant Ashes of the Just to allies, making their next strikes inflict burning. However, this will scale with your own condition damage, so be careful with using the skill or skip it entirely if you have Condi Firebrands in your group. If you are running the Radiant straight line, dealing damage with any of your F1 tome skills will trigger Lesser Signet of Wrath and share the condition damage with your allies through the Perfect Inscription trait. So make sure to go into your F1 tome often enough to trigger the trait in condition-based compositions. It has a 20-second internal cooldown. Let's see this in action. I will open the F1 tome and place the fire field, and you will see I get Signet of Wrath for 10 seconds, and this effect will also be shared with my allies. When running Radiance, the F1 tome will also reset from killing certain enemies. It will not reset the skills in the tome, so if you plan on using it just for the fire field, you will still need to wait for the cooldown of the fire field to be up. The common rotation in the F1 tome is to enter it, press your 4 skill for a fire field, maybe press your 5 skill for the Ashes of the Just, and then leave it again. The F2 tome will be mainly used for emergency healing and cleansing. Entering it will already remove some conditions if you are running the Virtue straight line. Skill 1 will heal allies in a cone in front of you. Skill 2 will cleanse and heal allies around you. Skill 3 gives some boons but will rarely ever be used. Skill 4 places a healing field on the ground that is a water field and can be blasted for extra healing. Skill 5 converts conditions into boons and grants allies an incoming healing modifier for 8 seconds. The rotation in the F2 tome will depend on when you enter it. If you have some extra time before the damage is incoming, then you can enter it and use 2, 5, 4, 1, and 2 again for maximum healing and cleansing. However, if your group is already low and you need the immediate burst healing, you want to enter the tome and start off with your big healing modifier using 5, 4, 2, 1, 1. You have 3 tome will be used for gaining massive stability, resistance, or reflect. Skill 1 will give stability to allies. Skill 2 will inflict taunt to enemies, which is a good soft CC for slower break bars. Skill 3 creates a bubble that will reflect projectiles inside the targeted area. Skill 4 puts down a field that pulses resistance. This is really nice against Immobilize and Blind, however it will no longer save you from damaging conditions such as burning or bleeding. Skill 5 provides protection, Aegis, and stability, as well as extra 300 toughness to your group. This is an insanely powerful skill, but be careful in raids that the 300 toughness will not change aggro on the fights with toughness-based tanking. There is no set rotation in this tome. Use whatever skills you need for their utility, and then make sure to use your skill 5 every time you enter this tome, unless it would create a tanking issue in raids. You can camp in this tome for a few extra seconds to get an extra cast for an important skill, for example if a second reflect is needed. However, make sure to only do this when absolutely needed, as you will not have access to the boons and healing your weapon skills provide while you are in the tome. Quick disclaimer about tomes, specifically F2 and F3. Keep in mind that tomes have a cast time and can therefore be interrupted. You will most likely enter these in emergency situations, and you will most likely also be pressing the 5 skill as the first skill when entering the tome. Make sure to not spam 5 when entering the tome, since this can cancel your tome skill. On both of your weapon sets, your skill 5 will cancel any other active skill. For example, if I want to place a staff 3, and then during the cast I will press staff 5 fast enough, it will cancel my staff 3. This works with any skill. Same on axe. If I use axe 3 and then use shield 5, you will see the axe 3 was cancelled. This works too for tomes, so if I want to go into the F3 tome and then try to start spamming my 5 skill, you will see the tome gets cancelled and goes on a 3-second cooldown. So make sure when you enter these tomes that you only press the skill 5 once you are in the tome, and don't spam the 5 button while trying to enter the tome. Let's have a look at our weapon skills. The axe auto attack will deal a decent amount of damage even on a healing build. Axe 2 places a symbol that will pulse fury. Thanks to the honor trait line, the symbol will last 6 seconds instead of 4, and also heal allies within. Use this whenever it is up to grant 100% fury to 5 people and also provide a nice extra boost to passive healing. Axe 3 pulls enemies in front of you. This is useful for pulling in adds as well as helping with break bars. Shield 4 grants allies in front of you Aegis and protection. This is your only reliable source of protection, since you do not want to enter the F3 tome just for the protection on the skill 5. When using this to block attacks, remember that it has a cast time, however. Shield 5 is a channeled ability that will create a bubble around you, absorbing projectiles and initially knocking back foes inside. Detonating the bubble early will heal your allies and yourself. This skill is very flexible, as it can simply be double tapped for burst healing or CC, as well as being channeled longer for negating projectiles. On staff, your auto attack is rather weak, but it can be used from a range for aggroing at. Staff 2 is a small heal and a blast finisher with a long range. It can also be used to aggro adds, but is mainly used to either blast light fields for Condi cleanse or fire fields for might. A common usage of this skill is if you go into your F1 tome and create your fire field with the 4 skill, you can then exit the tome and blast your fire field with staff 2 for area might. Staff 3 creates a symbol similar to your axe 2. However, instead of pulsing fury, this will pulse swiftness to your allies. Once again, thanks to the honor trait line, we will have 6 seconds duration instead of 4, and the symbol will pulse healing to allies. So use this whenever it is up for the extra passive healing as well as some nice swiftness uptime. This can also create a light field, so it can be blasted with Holy Strike to create area Condi cleanse for your group. Staff 4 Empower locks you in place and grants might and healing while channeling. If you are a main source of might, like in Fractals, use this whenever it is up. In raids, if you have another might source, like a druid, you only need to use this when you need the burst healing. Staff 5 creates a line that will not let enemies pass. This is a rather niche skill to use, however it can be useful on some raid encounters like Samara, and it can also help break bars if a boss is moving across it. If Fury is already provided in your group, you can swap out the axe for a mace. Your mace auto attack deals a decent amount of damage even on a healing build. Finishing the auto attack chain will grant a good amount of healing as well. Mace 2 places a symbol similar to Axe 2, however it will pulse regeneration instead of Fury. Use this whenever it is up. It will also provide some extra healing and last longer due to the honor trait line. Mace 3 is a channeled ability that will block the next incoming attack and grant Aegis to allies if you successfully blocked an attack. This skill is very strong, but you will sometimes need to run into an attack on purpose to block it and share the Aegis. Let's have a look at our utility skills. Of course, the exact skills you should take will depend on the boss, the group, and your own preference. This list will just help you choose which skills to take in which situation. First of all, the healing skill. As a healing skill, we will always have Mantra of Solace. With weighty terms, you gain a charge every 9.5 seconds, which will be reduced even further with Alacrity. This means you can get Quickness through the trait Liberator's Vow and Firebrand line every time a charge comes back up, while the other heal skills have either a 25 or 30-second cooldown. The heal mantra is also incredibly powerful with its on-demand Aegis and group healing. The way we will use this is that as soon as we have 3 charges, we use it once to give Quickness and Aegis, and then we wait until the charge comes back, and as soon as it's back, our Liberator's Vow cooldown will be over too, so we can press it again and get Quickness again. Pressing this skill more than every 7 seconds will not result in Quickness being given, since the only Quickness from the skill is through the Liberator's Vow trait. You see, I can spam it down to 0 and I didn't get any more Quickness than I had before. One quick clarification about tooltip of the heal mantra. As you can see at the bottom, there's 3 numbers: radius 180, radius 360, and also range 450. The radius 180 and range 450 will be found on every other mantra. This means the mantra has an area around you with the 180 radius, and then it will also be active in a cone in front of you with the range of 450. So as you can see, if I go on the circle marker here and press my heal mantra, it will not affect my ally. However, if I turn around and aim the mantra towards him, it will grant him Aegis, since he is now in the 450 range. Now for the trait Liberator's Vow. Anything that is indicated in blue on the tooltip of a skill comes from a trait. So in this case, the radius 360 comes from a trait. This is Liberator's Vow. As you can read, it affects 5 allies on a 7-second cooldown with the radius of 360. If I now go into 360 radius, which is about the arrow marker, I can use my heal skill again. If I face towards him, I will hit him with my heal mantra to give him Aegis, and I will be in the 360 radius to give him Quickness via the Liberator's Vow trait. However, giving the Quickness via Liberator's Vow is not tied to hitting your ally with the heal mantra. If I look away from him and press my heal mantra again, I will not grant him Aegis, but he will still get the Quickness from Liberator's Vow since he was in a 360 radius around me. This means if your group is close to you, you can always press your heal mantra to give them Quickness, even if it might not always give them Aegis. Let's move on to the utility skills. Mantra of Potent should always be run. It will cover a good amount of Quickness and help out with Might too. One charge will be available every 8.5 seconds and will be reduced further by Alacrity. Like with every other mantra, make sure to either be closely stacked with your group to be within the 180 radius, or look at them while pressing the mantra to hit them with the 450 range cone. This mantra you can use down to 0 charges and press whenever you are in range of allies whenever a charge comes back up to keep up Quickness. Together with pressing the healing mantra once every 7 seconds, you can provide permanent Quickness to your group just by pressing those 2 skills. Moving on to Bane Signet. Bane Signet is a strong CC and should always be run when running the Radiant straight line in a power DPS focused composition to share its passive with allies, or when CC is needed. When CC is not needed, it can also be used regularly just for the group damage buff it provides. Let's look at the other utility skills. First, Bow of Truth provides strong area healing for around 4 seconds and also creates a light field in case you need to blast Condi Cleanse. Stand Your Ground can be used when extra stability is needed. Its advantages over Hallowed Ground are the slightly lower cooldown, the instacast, as well as being able to affect 10 allies in raids. Keep in mind that while the stability application is 10 men, it will only act as a stun break for yourself.
Stand your ground.
Speaking of, let's move on to Hallowed Ground. Hallowed Ground can also be used when extra stability is needed. It has a longer cooldown than Stand Your Ground, but will pulse more stability while the group is stacked on a stationary target, and can be improved even further with the Master of Consecration straight line when running the Virtues build. It also provides a fire field to blast some area might. Wall of Reflection does exactly what it says. It can be used to reflect projectiles when needed and creates a wall in front of you. This is a consecration and will therefore benefit from the Master of Consecration straight and the Virtue straight line, similar as the other ones. Next, Sanctuary. Sanctuary is mostly used for strong CC over time on bosses with the break bar, since it will try to continuously push out enemies within. This is mostly used on the Sangwa Peak Challenge Mode Fractal currently. It's a consecration and would therefore also benefit from the Master of Consecration traits in the Virtues trait line. Lastly, for the consecrations we have Purging Flames. It creates a field that burdens enemies within and cleanses conditions from allies. It is useful when conditions are inflicted multiple times in a short period of time, but has a long cooldown afterwards, and is therefore often less useful than the Mantra of Lore. Once again, this is the last consecration, so it will also benefit from the Master of Consecrations trait in the Virtues trait line. And speaking of, let's look at the Mantra of Lore. Mantra of Lore, similar to the other mantras, is a mantra that you will either need to be stacked on your group for the 180 radius, or be behind your group looking at them for the 450 range cone. It will instantly cleanse conditions and doesn't have any cast time. It also provides some extra regeneration. This should be used in any fight where Connie cleanse is needed multiple times due to the significantly lower recharge time compared to the cooldown of Purging Flames. You can also always keep this at 2 stacks to keep up some regeneration on your group, and keep the other 2 charges for Connie cleanse when it's needed. Next up is Retreat. Retreat will provide extra Aegis to the group and is useful when the active damage mitigation from the extra Aegis is more beneficial than the healing or cleanse from other utilities.
Retreat!
And then lastly, Hammer of Wisdom. Hammer of Wisdom is a strong extra CC skill that will knock down the enemy for 2 seconds. It should be run for extra CC when no other healing utilities are needed. Let's look at some less common utility skills. Signet of Wrath can be run with Radiance to share the condition damage to allies in a condition-focused composition. However, it will take 3 seconds, assuming no other sources of Immobilize on your group, to do the same CC as Bane Signet does instantly. Hold the Line covers extra protection uptime but will rarely be used. Judge's Intervention blinks you to an enemy but is mostly useful for skips and fractals. Merciful Intervention will blink you to an ally and partially revive and heal allies in the area. This skill is mostly useful for skips and fractals, especially in combination with Sword of Justice. You could also take the skill if your group downs frequently, however it is usually better to take another utility to either block incoming attacks for your allies or heal them up before they go into the down state. And then lastly, the mentioned Sword of Justice. It provides some vulnerability and cripple, but is mostly used for skips and fractals in combination with Merciful Intervention. You can place a Sword of Justice and then blink to it using Merciful Intervention to skip certain areas. Lastly, let's look at the elite skills. The default choice will be Mantra of Liberation, which stun breaks yourself and allies, as well as giving them stability and resolution. Only ever swap this one out if there's absolutely no need for stability and resolution on a given encounter. However, if that is the case, feel free to take one of the 2 other elite skills. Feel My Wrath provides extra quickness and fury to the group. However, you should be able to upkeep 100% on both of those boons without it, so only take this if you struggle maintaining these 2 boons. The other option is Signet of Courage. It is a great passive heal. Keep in mind that the active part has a very long channel and locks you in place while channeling. When running the Radiant straight line, activating this will also grant its passive effect to 5 allies, meaning 5 people will now have an AoE heal around them for the next 10 seconds. Let's look at how to provide boons. First of all, I gave myself Alacrity from the console because this boon will be present in both Fractals and Raids. We will look at Quickness first. Quickness will be provided through using the heal mantra. Every 7 seconds this will trigger the Trade Liberator's vow, and also through using the Quickness mantra. Keep 2 charges of the heal mantra for providing Aegis and use it every time the charge goes back up to 3 as shown earlier. I will use the heal mantra here, wait for it to come back to 3 charges, and once I have 3 charges I can press it again, and you will see we gain Quickness again through the Trade Liberator's vow. For the Quickness mantra, we can spam it down to 0 charges whenever we are stacked with our group. Let's see this in action. I'm going to use both of them once, and then I spam the Quickness mantra down to 0. And now whenever a charge comes back, I use the heal mantra down to 2 charges and the Quickness mantra down to 0 charges. And you can see the Quickness will never run out. After pressing both those buttons, my Quickness right now was at 20 seconds, so we will wait for it to come back here. Now both of them are back, and if I hover over Quickness, you will see I am again at 20 seconds. This means we can provide permanent Quickness just with these 2 skills as long as we use them properly. A quick disclaimer about might. If you are playing this build in Fractals, you will be responsible for providing a large chunk of the might needed. However, if you are playing this in raids, there's a decent chance that you will have a druid who can provide 10 man 25 might to your group, so you will not need to provide might in that scenario. First of all, staff 4 is a big source of might and should be used off cooldown whenever you're on staff and on the group. This provides 12 stacks of might for a total of 24 seconds, and it will also heal allies while casting it. Then, as mentioned before, going into the F1 tome and using the skill 4 to create a fire field makes us able to then blast it with our staff 2, creating area might. Placing the fire field will also give allies the option to blast might when coordinated. The Quickness mantra will also give some might, and as we have seen before in the Quickness section, we will be using this regularly, so this will help us out with might as well. Next up, Fury. Fury will be provided solely through the Axe 2. Make sure to use this off cooldown when people are stacked together. If a boss is about to move, you can delay this for a bit so everyone is staying in the symbol. Swiftness mainly comes from staff 3 and should be treated the exact same way as Axe 2 since they work the same. Protection can be provided with about 50% uptime through the shield 4, which also gives some Aegis. The F3 tome skill 5 also provides protection, however you should not just waste your F3 tome to get a bit of a higher protection uptime. Regeneration comes from your mace 2 if a mace is equipped and should be treated the same as Axe 2. Otherwise, regeneration also comes from your Mantra of Lore when you are running it. Mantra of Lore can be used similarly to the heal mantra. You can always get it down to 2 charges to provide some regeneration, and then keep the other 2 charges in case you need some emergency Condi cleanse. Resolution is provided through the Elite mantra. So if you think you do not need any stability, you can also use it down to 2 charges similar to the heal mantra, in order to provide some resolution to the group. Let's look at this on the Golem. I usually like to start with a staff 3 to give some swiftness, and then I will use Empower while using my mantras. I will try to spam my mantra of Potence to 0 charges while using other skills afterwards. As soon as staff 4 finished casting, I swap to Axe and use my Axe 2. From there on out, we can just spam all our skills that have been mentioned before. Whenever my mantras come back to 3 charges, I will use them once. And I will always keep my Quickness mantra at 0 charges. If you want, you can also incorporate your F1 tome skill 4 and blast it with staff 2 whenever you are on staff. Now I swap to staff and use staff 4 right away. So now towards the end of the weapon swap, we can choose to stay on staff a bit longer to provide some extra might by using the skill again.
good.
For a change of scenery, let's go into the fractal area and look at pre-stacking boons and fractals. The absolute minimum that you want to do is using staff 4 while using your heal mantra once and other mantras that you have equipped multiple times. Then grabbing the singularity, using staff 4 again, and pressing your quickness mantra once. Save the rest of the charges for when you are at the boss. As you can see, we will get 25 might, a nice amount of quickness, resolution, and regeneration. Let's look at some additional things that we can do for pre-stacking in fractals. First of all, we are able to provide a fire field if needed. You can go into your F1 tome, skill 4, to provide a short fire field if you want to. Otherwise, you can also use Hallowed Ground to provide a longer fire field as well as some extra resolution. However, this skill has to be slotted specifically for pre-stacking. After we provide a fire field, we can use our staff 2 to blast some might. After that, we continue as before. We use our staff 4 to give might, and while pressing staff 4, we will press the heal mantra once, and then any other mantra 3 times if possible. If we have Feel My Wrath equipped, we can now use Feel My Wrath. Another optional thing is Bane Signet. If you think you can start the fight within 10 seconds of using this, you should use Bane Signet before grabbing the Singularity. After that, it is time to grab the Singularity and once again use Staff 4 to give might, while using one charge of the Quickness mantra. While running to the boss, we can use our Staff 3 for some swiftness, and once we reach the boss, we can use our Axe 2 to provide fury at the boss. Let's go through all of this at once.
Knowledge is power.
Back at the raid golem, let's look at 2 more situational boons, Aegis and Stability. The correct application of Aegis will require knowledge of the encounters and what attacks are most impactful to block. As mentioned above, keep your heal mantra at 2 charges and use them when Aegis is needed. Shield 4 will also give Aegis. Prioritize this over using the heal mantra charges, since this is also your main source of protection. Your F3 tome, skill 5, will grant Aegis as well. However, you will rarely enter the F3 tome just for a single Aegis application. When running with the mace, your skill 3 also grants Aegis to allies after you block an attack with it. Sometimes you will have to run into an attack actively while channeling this in order to trigger the Aegis application to your group. Retreat is another instant cast Aegis application besides your heal mantra when chosen. You can use instant cast heals, namely the heal mantra and retreat, while channeling other skills. So if you need to use staff 4 to provide might but an attack is incoming, you can still cast your staff 4 and grant Aegis during the cast with one of those skills.
Time to do some heal.
Now for stability. The correct application of stability also requires knowledge of the encounters, and what attacks can be negated with stability without taking too much damage. Make sure to not apply too much stability at once. For example, if you are using Stand Your Ground, you will most likely not need to apply any more stability until the boon ends, since it provides 5 stacks.
Stand your ground.
Your Elite mantra will be the easiest access to stability. However, keep in mind that this only provides 1 stack of stability. The most common utility choice for extra stability is Stand Your Ground. But when the longer cooldown of Hallowed Ground is not an issue, that one can be used very well on stationary targets. Similar to the heal mantra and retreat for Aegis, you can use the Elite mantra and Stand Your Ground while casting Staff 4 if an interrupt is incoming.
Stand your ground.
Your F3 tome will also give a very good amount of stability, but it is on a fairly long cooldown and it takes some time to enter. So make sure to press the tome a few seconds before the attack happens to have enough time to open it and cast your skill 5 or skill 1 for stability. Use your F3 tome more as a last resort for stability, and make sure you are able to provide enough healing while being in the tome, since it replaces your weapon skills. This would be achieved through dodges, utilities, or pre-placed symbols. Since we now know how to provide boons, let's look at healing. Try to sustain your group as well as you can through consistent healing and use your burst healing only when it is needed. Keep in mind that active damage mitigation through avoiding attacks or blocking them with Aegis is often very valuable and will help a lot more than increasing healing numbers by a bit. When running the Virtue straight line, you will have naturally higher passive healing, since it will give your F2 passive to your allies and also improve it. A lot of your consistent healing comes from your symbols. Since you want to use your Axe 2 as well as Staff 3 whenever you are on the according weapon set, this will give a nice amount of consistent healing to your group through the entire fight. If you are a Might Source, you will also cast Staff 4 off cooldown, which will provide some extra healing as well. Keep in mind that dodging also heals allies thanks to the Honor trait line. Make sure to keep enough endurance to avoid mechanics, but feel free to use up dodges for healing at times. If the Cleanse mantra is equipped, it will also provide regeneration to your group, so use it down to 2 stacks whenever it goes back up to 3. If Mace is equipped, the auto attacks will also provide a good amount of healing, and Mace 2 will grant extra regeneration. For this purpose, I turned on the pulsing arena damage on light on the golem. As mentioned before, our regular boon rotation already has a lot of healing built into it. So let's just do our boon rotation from earlier and see how it goes against the mild arena damage from the golem. We will run into the golem as always and use our staff 3. Once we are there, we use staff 5, spam our mantras, and swap to axe. As you can see, I get a lot of passive healing just from placing the symbols, and from the regeneration ticks from the cleanse mantra. If you cannot sustain your group just through consistent healing methods, you have some minor burst healing options as well as a big one. If you do not have to provide might, which is mostly in raids, if you have a druid in your squad doing 10-man might, then you could stay on act for most of the fight and use staff as an emergency healing through the use of the healing from the staff 3 symbol, as well as the burst healing from staff 2 and 4. Other than that, when slotted as a utility skill, you can use Bow of Truth, which will do massive healing over the next 4 seconds. Outside of that, your F2 tome is the biggest source of burst healing and should be used as a last resort. However, due to the cast time of entering the tome and pressing the skills, make sure to not hesitate too long, and preferably, if you know ahead of time that a lot of damage is happening, enter the tome early. If the healing does not need to be immediate, you can enter the tome and use skill 2, 5, 4, 1, 2. Otherwise, if the healing needs to be instant, you can enter the tome and use the skill 5, 4, 2, 1, 1. Lastly, let's look at Condi Cleanse. If a lot of condition cleanse is needed, you will be most likely taking the Cleanse mantra, which is the main reliable source of Condi Cleanse. Creating a symbol with staff 3 and then blasting it with staff 2 will also blast area condition cleanse. Skill 2 and 5 in your F2 tome will cleanse as well. However, same as with the burst healing, this is often the last option to use. When running the Virtue straight line, entering this tome will also immediately cleanse conditions. As a last topic, let's look at CC. Our main CC skill when running it will be Bane Signet. Bane Signet knocks down the enemy for 3 seconds, which will do 300 damage to the break bar. Our Axe 3 will pull enemies in front of us towards us. This will do 150 damage to the break bar. Shield 5 will initially knock back allies and also do 150 damage. This means that a good opening CC combo will be to use Bane Signet and then Axe 3 followed by Shield 5. Keep in mind that Shield 5 cancels other skills, so make sure to not spam it too quickly while using the Axe 3. Other potential sources of CC are Hammer of Wisdom when slotted. This will do 200 break bar damage, as well as going into our F1 tome and using skill 3. As you can see, the enemy is currently also immobilized. When running the Radiant straight line, you will have the trait Wrath of Justice. which will make striking an enemy with a damaging effect from the Virtue Skill 1 cast Lesser Signet of Wrath. As mentioned earlier, on Firebrand this triggers whenever you hit an enemy with any of your Tome F1 skills. Lesser Signet of Wrath immobilizes the enemy for 3 seconds, which means you will have an additional 300 breakbar damage over the next 3 seconds. And this is it for my guide on how to play Heal Firebrand for endgame PV. Thank you all for watching and see you next time.